We have a patient wearing a ski mask, punching a mirror, stating he's going to 211 Bank.
Lieutenant Spencer Fomby is rushing to a call in Berkeley, California. This was in January, before the pandemic hit the United States, so he and the other officers aren't wearing facial coverings.
So this is a person, a hospital, so there's 2 hospitals that we take people to if they're in mental health crisis. This is one of them calling us. Their security is requesting the police to secure this person.
He's preparing to help a team of officers engage with a man who appears to be having a mental health crisis. When the officers arrive, they take a specific approach.
So if there's not an immediate threat to the officers or to some other person, then most of the times the officers can slow things down, take their time and start to call resources and start to coordinate a response to the problem instead of taking individual action or using force immediately.
Police can use other tactics as well, like using their squad car for cover and designating one officer to do the talking so the person doesn't feel confused or threatened. In this case, a female officer was already on the scene talking to the man, so Fomby hung back. In his 19-year career, Fomby has been involved in 4 incidents that ended with an officer shooting someone.
We can't avoid officer-involved shootings altogether, but again, with a certain approach, certain tactics, we can minimize the chances that we'll get into a deadly force confrontation.
But the city of Berkeley hasn't had an officer-involved shooting in 8 years. Fomby says the training Berkeley officers receive also puts an emphasis on how race impacts the relationships between police and the public.
Our goal with de-escalation is to reduce use of force in every situation and make it safer for the officers and for the community. And then at the same time, when we're looking at implicit bias training, racial profiling, doing assessments of stop data and trying to figure out where those disparities lie, then I think if you combine those 2 things, then we can really get to the heart of the problem, or at least try to affect it in some way.
It's a department-wide initiative. It's something that the chief believes in all the way down to line officers.
Philip Stinson is a former police officer and professor of criminal justice at Bowling Green State University. He says Berkeley is far ahead of most departments on this issue.
Instead of what we see in many police departments where officers are very quick to race into a situation, they're actually stepping back, assessing the situation, trying to get tactical advantage.
On the call Fomby answered about the man wearing a ski mask, the situation did escalate.
We're attempting to de-escalate in the sense that if he just sits there with the handcuffs on, fine. Once he tries to put the handcuffs in front of him, now we have to escalate to control him so that he doesn't run or fight. And then it kind of goes from there. And then we decide we're going to put him in a wrap, which in a lot of cases, the person, once you put the leg restraints on, like, okay, and they'll calm down, and then they'll sit there and wait for the ambulance. But for him, he starts contorting and kicking and trying to assault us. So then now we have to control him with the top harness and then also put a spit hood on him because he's spitting on officers. And then once we have him restrained there, we can't de-escalate because now he's headbutting people. And it just kind of went from there.
In addition to the spit hood, officers called EMTs who gave the man an injection of a sedative and took him to the hospital. But even that approach drew criticism from a small crowd that had gathered to observe the incident.
Step back! Step back! He is assaulting the officer!
The department's use of wraps and spit hoods is controversial in the community. The devices restrict a person's movement, but there are concerns they limit breathing. Fomby says he understands the community's concerns and wishes police weren't called to mental health stops like this at all.
You have a person who needs long-term intensive mental health treatment. And what are we saying as a society? What are we saying as a state where the police, I agree that police should not be the first responders to mental health crisis calls. Something's got to give, because if people want better outcomes and they want to see better results, something has to happen, because the public, they're calling us to come deal with these situations.
That would take big changes to how policing is done. But in this moment, unlike ever before, that suddenly seems possible. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.